No more segregation, no matter the nation. We coming together, lifting up the Father, yeah. With a smiling face, we giving him praise, every creed and race, no matter the place, no people that won't we stop. United we standing up, take the praises to the top. Tell them we're not giving up. This present.
Good day and welcome to Keeping It Real. My name is John Arnold, and today I am with my friend and colleague, Mr. Louis Lewis. He's currently the CEO of the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited. And today we're going to be addressing the question of airport development, airports and tourism. And let me just tell you, Keeping It Real is really a program where we're going to be focused on education, keeping people aware of some of the topical issues around not only Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean and across the globe, and also the issue of informing you and keeping you totally in tune with what's happening. Today, I'm really, really pleased to talk to Mr. Lewis because he's not just the consummate professional in what he does, but he's from St. Lucia, but he has really, really, really made a significant impact on the tourism landscape here in Tobago. So Louis, I want to welcome you to the program and tell us a bit about your background, just to get things going, you know.
Yeah, well,
keep it light.
yeah. Well, thank you very much, John, for that introduction.
Yeah.
I noticed you emphasized the point that I was born in St. Lucia. That's a coincidence of biology. Yeah. But I like to tell friends of mine, you know, and people who have inquired that I'm a proud student of the University of the West Indies.
Good.
I graduate, you know, twice. I also tell people, particularly from Trinidad and Tobago, that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is probably the second largest investor in that institution. So see me as a return on investment. As long as you are paying taxes,
I love
you know, that's what it is.
That's an interesting perspective. Actually, it's a good perspective too. But no, I really want to say congrats on the impact. The Beyond the Ordinary has really, really kind of carved its own space, you know, in what we're doing. And we'll talk a bit about the challenges. But today I thought we wanted to talk about this issue of airports. Airports, you know, are a significant piece of infrastructure in the whole tourism product. But I wanted to just tell our listeners, what are some of the benefits of airports as we know it?
Well, as an island state, you have two ways in which you can get to Trinidad or Tobago. It's by either coming in by the air or coming in by sea. So let's confine our remarks to the airport. The airport is the first point of contact that any visitor has with the destination in a real sense. So that has to create that first impression. And a lot of the quality of the experience comes as a result of that first interaction. So it is very important that we have a proper airport. But beyond that, the airport has to be able to attract and facilitate the visitors that we have. And for us right now, most of our visitors come from international spaces, and not just international spaces, they're coming from long-haul destinations. So a long-haul destination, out of necessity, requires wide-body aircraft and the facilities that come with that. So you cannot just put an airstrip, you have to have a proper airport.
Right.
Now, the visitor interaction is important. The processing, the length of time it takes somebody to get from the tarmac to the arrivals is key and important. So your business flow has to be well. The courtesy that you treat them with, you know, is very important in creating that first interaction. The customs experience, you know, how that unfolds is a function of the personnel as well as the configuration. So these things have to be taken into consideration, you know, very, very clearly. But airports themselves are evolving over time.
Right.
And an airport is now not just seen as a transit point, it's seen as an experience, because while it is the first point of contact with your visitors, it's also the last point of contact.
That's right.
And the last point of contact, when you take things into consideration like spending opportunities to catch that last dollar, that extra dollar the person has, the last opportunity to get a souvenir to say that, you know, I was here and I had a good time. The airport has to be able to provide those things. And it's not just about putting a system in place to accommodate planes. It has to be seen from the marketing potential, where it's the first point and the last point of contact. The ability for you to translate what that destination is about is the last opportunity to create a visitor who you would have spent a whole set of money trying to attract in the first place, to turn them into a positive commentator and also a marketer for you. And at the same time, you have to develop a good reputation. So the transition from the airport and into the mainstay has to be proper. So it's systems, people, accommodation, facilities, opportunities to spend. All of that is now part of what a new airport is.
I think one of the other things, and I know you'll comment on it, the issue of employment, because I think it offers several local people the opportunity to get employed in a good international airport. It also allows the government to also get certain kinds of taxes, certain kinds of benefits from that in terms of aircraft and airlines and so on. So give us a little bit.
There are several ways in which a country earns from having an airport. There are landing fees.
Right.
There's a sale of fuel. I mean, very rare do you find an aircraft coming in, especially as I mentioned that they're going long haul. They have to refuel. And you cannot import fuel, so it's the provision of it. So that's an opportunity. The landing fees, there is the processing fees, there is the representation that each airline has a local representative to deal with their passengers, especially those that are coming from international markets, so that, God forbid, something happens like pandemic or the airline shuts down, they have to have a representative that will be responsible for getting them back out. So that's a revenue opportunity as well. Then you have the revenue in terms of the personnel who are engaged at that place of operation, being what we call the airport. The people who sell at the merchandising places. And that is something where we in Tobago are deficient because we are far from what is happening competitively within the region. Just take our eyes up, the island chain. St. Vincent has a whole new airport they just reconstructed.
Dominica is getting one.
Barbados just redid theirs. St. Lucia has spoken about, a reformation of theirs as well. Antigua recently had a major overhaul. So all our competitors are gaining that competitive advantage on us, and we are lagging way behind. So it's very positive that the government is addressing that. It says something very strong and positive about how we see tourism and how we see it going forward.
Well, I'm glad you made the point, because one of the things that used to hit me every time I land in Las Vegas was the fact that the airport, we all know that it's a casino town. And it's amazing as you land and you come in, all these machines are there for you to start getting the culture of the space you're entering. And when you leave, same thing.
I mean, I was shocked to see gaming machines at the carousel. But there's no doubt in your mind where you are in the world.
Where you are in the world. No doubt.
And what they have done, it comes back to they have capitalized on the opportunities to capture your expenditure.
That's right.
And we can do some of those things with a little innovation to ensure that there's a link between what we have on the island and what a visitor is going to experience. So it's not far-fetched to have some of our local products available.
I'll tell you what my dream is as we segue there, just for a bit. It will be so nice that during the real heavy season of tourists being here, that now that we have a place like Shaw Park Complex, that you can have groups who are doing real solid productions, or maybe encourage groups to create the kind of productions that will entail music, dance, drama, and so on. Now we have TPAC. I mean, if that is the way they're going. But those can actually create some products. I'm not saying we can't be like Las Vegas, like me. Every time I go to Las Vegas, I have to go to all those shows that are around. But we certainly can take advantage of creating that as a sub-product that people can. You come to a hotel, we tell you, this production called Gangang Sira is on tonight, every night for the next week. You may want to go to that. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
That is a perfect opportunity, because And you said that when you go to Las Vegas, you see all of
Yeah.
those shows and you want to go to all of them.
Yeah.
We can create that same appetite for what we have as ours.
That's right.
Because it's just different, but it is no lesser quality, and an airport gives you an opportunity for showcasing that. I mean, a simple thing, I'm not any airport expert, but if I were looking for an opportunity, the transit point between the tarmac and getting to the immigration officers as the first person that you start to see, there are several opportunities for you to advertise shows, events, places of interest, and that is a way of ensuring that you get more out of a visitor interaction with your country. And we into this business not just because we are happy and hospitable people. We into this business because we earn a living from it.
Yes.
So that has to be at the forefront of our imagination.
Yeah.
How do we get more out of it by presenting that to the visitors? And people don't travel to experience the same. They travel to experience something that is different. And that is what we have in abundance. Things that are different.
Pre on air, we had a nice little conversation. I want to bring you to it. The airlift, well, of course, I've been in tourism myself from 2003 when I left teaching.
Okay.
You left something else,
yes,
right?
Yes. When I left tourism.
But during that time, 2003, there was a whole thrust of event tourism, festival tourism. We had just come out of the Ring Bang, which, for some people they saw a negative in it, but we had to get back to that where we created events, and we started with the International Gospel. We went to we eventually developed things like the Motadi, and we had the Jazz Festival from 2005, as you know. But one of the things is that during that period, we now had airlift as a big thing, and I remember doing water salutes for Martin Air, for Lauder Air, coming out, and I even used one airline one time to go to Vienna, and we also had one coming out of Holland and so on. But I think you made some very interesting points, that whole model of getting those charters to come, we may need to revisit that and look at that, because during that time, it worked. You had those numbers went up, right? So what would be your comments on airlift, given what I just said?
Yeah, I could get in a little bit of hot water for that, but I
will
tell you what some of the issues are. The era where you had those charter services, that facilitated a certain market dynamics. Market dynamics in the sense that charters came on the scene and it allowed the customer to get cheaper airfares to get to a destination. They were real dirt cheap, sometimes as little as 50% of what a standard airfare would be. But what has happened is that the internet and IT technology has changed the whole landscape, and it has now put the power in the hands of the consumer. And the consumer now, you don't have to go to a travel agency.
Yeah.
You can go to one of those wholesalers, Expedia, Travelocity, Booking.com, and you can buy a ticket. And what has happened now is that access to the airline is in the hands of the consumer, and the prices are driven down, so much so that the charters have actually faded out. Right. So they are no longer viable as operations in and of themselves. And there's another part of the dynamics that has happened where the airlines have become creative against the lower prices of the charters.
That's right.
And they have set up affinity programs. So you have travel miles that you can redeem. And now they associate expenditure with travel with Visa cards. So you can never travel before, but have a tremendous amount of miles that you redeem to travel. So you can buy, your stereo set, your shoes, your groceries, and after a certain level of purchases, you now earn 20,000 miles. Yeah. You're going to ask yourself the question, where can I redeem those miles? Only on an airline.
Right.
So you jump on a plane that goes to a particular destination, and that is your scheduled service. So the charter services have really become marginalized. And there's another part of it in terms of people's travel patterns. There's an expectation that I want to go for 6 days. I want to go for 4 days. I only have 3 days. Now, if you have a weekly service, as we have in a number of cases in Tobago, that becomes an inconvenience for a lot of passengers. So it's a cyclical problem, a problem upon a problem, that we don't have the volume and then we don't have the flexibility, and the flexibility affects the volume, and the volume affects the flexibility. So is that, but the market dynamics have moved. And, and I know what you're
big time. I mean, this phone has now changed the way we do everything.
Everything, yeah. There's so much more that you can do on a platform.
But I think you also made a real good point that we need to make. The point that, so if that doesn't happen and people now have more options online, the consumer is now the big boy. You know, he's now the one determining what's happening. We now would need to have, instead of 2 or 3 flights a week from some of the big airlines, we would now need to have more airlines, and then we have to now talk about new arrangements for the air bridge, right, to make that experience easy between somebody who just land and wants to get to Tobago.
So if you look at what is happening, and we have what I think is the perfect world in the Caribbean. You have the Trinidad product that really attracts business.
Right.
And then when you look at Tobago, which is just 15 minutes across, we have the vacation relaxation sort of opportunities. So to capitalize on a market that is created by another source of demand, which is business, you want to ensure that the transition from one point to the next is smooth or attractive and affordable. And that being somebody who may come down for oil business or a convention, in Trinidad, and suddenly hear about, the nylon pool they have across there, which is a geographical phenomenon, or they hear, about the rainforest, and they hear about the birding and that sort of thing, the diving and this sort of thing. It certainly attracts their curiosity. And so you get a free visitor. How do you capitalize on that person who may just make an adjustment in their flight or make an adjustment in their work itinerary and hop across for 2 days, 3 days? It cannot be a difficult task. You don't want that person sitting down at the airport for 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours. You have to have that capacity movement that allows, easy transition and that sort of thing. Because other than that, we'll be underachieving in terms of our revenue potential. So we have to be able to make it available, affordable, and visible so that somebody who is down in Trinidad looking for, on their own other business needs to know that, you have a little piece of paradise just within 15 minutes away from you. And it doesn't have to be a coincidental. It has to be, we have to be marketing in Trinidad to get, those people, that have the opportunity to come across and spend.
For those of you who are, who are just joining us, you're actually viewing Keeping It Real, and today my special guest, Louis Lewis from the Tital. Well, he's not from the Tital officially here, but that's where he works, and as a really, really solid conversation that we are having here today. Now, Louis, one of the things is that COVID is here. Came, and it has really, really done a big job on really killing tourism. One of the things, I know we talked about it, during this period, we had absolutely none of the big aircrafts coming into Tobago, right?
Yeah.
International arrivals went to zilch.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is that a number of hotels and guest houses and so on actually had to close. Unlike Trinidad, where a number of the hotels remained open because some of them were used to support the COVID step down and quarantine and so on. What is the approach from your mind as to how we can address some of these issues post-COVID to restore the kind of recovery for tourism in Tobago? I know it's a big challenge. I'm an entertainer. I don't.
Yeah, you've anchored it exactly where it is. It has really decimated the tourism product from the earnings capacity, and again, our destination is leisure.
Yes.
And so what you get is discretionary sort of travel. We had the good fortune of having access to the Trinidad market, the domestic market, which is 1 million people. And we started to see people come back. A lot of people don't know that we have been able to retain up to 80% of the transit between Trinidad and Tobago between January and April. 80% of what we had in our best year, which was 2019.
Right.
So that potential is there. We have not been able to market aggressively because that would be counter to the announcements and the requirements for social distancing and
Right.
and limiting your sort of person-to-person interaction. But it also signals to me that the potential is there for us to do much better than we have done. In the recovery phase, it's going to unfold in 3 different ways. One is that the first wave is going to be the domestic market. That is where we are going to capture the first set of visitors in Tobago. The second one is that pent-up demand from the diaspora.
Right.
We have a number of people
Want to come back home.
Yeah. They just want to reconnect. And even if they come into no relatives, but just the mere fact that they have a safe tropical place that they can go to, that to travel, and they call this place home. That's the second one that's going to come. And then the third one is the international travelers. But getting the international travel is going to be very different than how it was just 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be your just casual observer who just wants to get away. There'll be a bit of that. But you are looking for people in special interests. So we call them captive audiences. The people who are looking for off-the-beaten-track places, and it's nice that we are not a mass market destination,
Right.
so that's one.
Yeah.
People who are looking for wellness, and that is what we are focusing on. We are actually using this downtime, the shadow period,
Right.
to host a virtual conference that focuses on the wellness attributes that we have. And where we don't have it, we are going to create it because we have to show people the potential that exists in pairing the rainforest with, with rest and relaxation, restoration, your healing body, and get them into this oneness, because that is part of the human, the human nature and human experience, is bringing that awareness of the revenue potential in that we are going to feature Tobago as part of that. Then you want to look for your people who are looking for birds, looking for these exotic species.
The niche.
The niches, yeah. So we're going in all of those fields to capture what we call the special audiences, to capture those niches. And with it will come the other persons who will capture.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very focused and targeting approach to get to those visitors, and we know where they are. Yep. They have associations, they have groups, they have groupings. Yep. Is to get them through those associations, to get them through the magazines, to get them through the places where they read blogs and blogs and, you know,
Yeah.
and influencers and these things. And we are doing all of this thing now, you know, all of these arrangements now that we are closing.
You know, as you're talking there, something just came across my mind. How do we start to have people in Tobago, the local indigenous, experience some of the things that are happening here? You know, I talk to Tobagonians about the mangrove and the luminescent algae.
Yeah.
You know, the average guy on the street don't know about that experience.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, it hit me the other day, recently, that how do we get, because the more people get that experience, right, whether or not we go or I go to Cotton Bay, and I have that experience of with the boat and seeing the dolphins, you know, I mean, how do we get our own people? I am talking to you about something I'm experiencing right here in Tobago. But what are your thoughts about how that program could go so that we get that, what I call the space buying, so that everybody says, this is we Tobago. When I talk and I'm showing off to you, I telling you why you need to come to Tobago.
And you see, that's something we have not done well, and a lot of other islands in the Caribbean don't do that, you know, very well. We develop tourism for the visitors, but sometimes, and it becomes a difficult sell, you know, within the policy framework of the country, because when you have limited resources, the question is, do I facilitate, you know, additional subsidization for airlift, or do I build a hospital? And those things can be very, very difficult decisions. But if we accept that we develop in tourism for ourselves, because some of the things that we have to do is not for visitors, you know. Like you very well say, why isn't the average person aware of that bioluminescence you know, feature? That is worldwide accepted as a unique and novel thing to see.
I saw some tourists go crazy coming off of that already.
And I'll give you an example. When we engaged with the National Geographic Explorer, that is a worldwide recognized magazine, and these fellas have the best photographers out. They came down to Tobago, they looked at it, and they were doing 5 videos on Tobago so that they could keep on their content hub. They were so blown off by the experience that they booked a second flight to come down just to capture the bird, because they did not have the right equipment to capture it. So if highly technical people are seeing that, you know, and we live here.
I'm glad you talk about that.
And we are seeing, and we don't recognize that, and we don't want to blame the people. It's I mean, if you are very familiar with something, that is your world.
Right.
But when the people on the outside have never understood or see what it is to be nearly a kilometer away from the shore, and you're standing in knee-high water, just being there, you know, is a bit of a magical experience. That's your Nile and pool. Sometimes I tell people that is our Eiffel Tower, you know, just under the water. You know, come and experience it there.
Yeah.
So but what we have to do is to get people to appreciate it more. And that is a public awareness campaign. Yeah. And I concede that we have not done a very good job, you know, at that, but that is something for us to do in the future.
Well, I'm glad we got to talk a number of things there. Maybe I know we segued a lot from the airport, but as we come to a close, just with the coming of this new airport, I can see that it's going to be a paradigm shift for Tobago in a big way, and I know that you have actually articulated that. So in closing, just tell us a bit about how you see the coming of this new airport at the A.N.I. Robinson Airport, International Airport, and what it will do for us as we make this tourism thrust.
Yeah, John, that new airport is a game changer for us. We are actually modernizing ourselves as a destination and creating a conduit for people who are coming in to see that we are serious about tourism. Yeah. This is your first interaction with Tobago and also your last interaction with Tobago. And it's an opportunity for us to do it well, building into it capacity for the next 30 years. So that we're not going to come back to that in 2026 or 2030. You know, we will have a modern facility that will allow us to grow. And more than that, we have to put in place the facilities that are recognized as what is just generally accepted for a decent operation from a tourism destination. So your duty-free shopping facilities, areas to advertise the local craft that is available, you know, to showcase our arts, you know, as a destination with such a a strong cultural heritage, places to, to interact with visitors and those sorts of things. And that is what happens in a modern, tourism destination. So that face of our tourism industry is a major change. And, from as a tourism practitioner, I think that is definitely going to give us a boost.
Yeah. Louis, I can't tell you, I really enjoy this. I really, really enjoy this conversation. What's beautiful about talking with you? It's always a good conversation,
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And I really hope that our viewers, our listeners, really, really enjoyed. You were informed and educated on some of the things here in terms of Tobago and what's coming with the brand new airport and what airports do for our country. I think today we've been able to touch on that, and looking forward to being with you in the next episode of Keeping It Real. Thanks again, Louis.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Them can't curse who God bless. Can't curse who God bless. Never ever curse who God bless. My evil in me no walk with in a left hand. I'll soup and dance cap and me walk and go check down. Anyway me come me carry me no left hand. Make demon come out and go walk in depression. Man a Gideon me nah lift me weapon. Not one for a minute, not two for a second. Some why does attack up fi make an impression. But we got teach them a lesson. This event gone down a Obia man. Then she walk put spell pan Jehovah son. When the scripture start back like a Doberman, them all a plan get mashed up and no overturn. Say they got to when me walk with him over strong. And me weapons no corners so overstand. Christian no take mark up like poster plan. Me go and dance up like Balbo over long. Tell them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Me no know who somewhere try this. But them can't curse who God bless. All when demon a come a manifest. Them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Tell them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Me no know who somewhere try this. But them can't curse who God bless. All when demon a come a manifest. Them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Tell them can't curse who God bless. Listen me. Bang laka ling lang balaka ling lang laka ling loo. All the foul blood you come and a sprinkle, say the Christian not afraid you. Bang laka ling bilang balaka ling lang laka ling loo. All the foul blood you come and a sprinkle, say the Christian not afraid you. Every red light in my life, rock up and mash up this mantle. Every chop where the devil send, in a Jesus' name we cancel. Every weapon form shall amount to naught. Tell them cannot stop we unstoppable. Tell them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Me no know who somewhere try this. Them can't curse who God bless. All when demon a come a manifest. Them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Tell them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Me no know who somewhere try this. But them can't curse who God bless. All when demon a come a manifest. Them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Them can't curse who God bless. Listen me. Bible in a me no walk with in a left hand. I'll silk and dance cap and me walk and go check down. Anywhere me go me carry me no left hand. Make demon come out and go walk in depression. Man a Gideon, me nah lift me weapon. Not one for a minute, not two for a second. Some why they attack up me make an impression. But we got teach them a lesson. Miss Eve gone down a Obia man. Then she walk put spell pan Jehovah son. When the scripture start back like a Doberman, them whole a plan get mashed up and overturn. Then they got when me walk with him over strong. And me weapons no corners so overstand. This stand not take mark up like poster plan. Me go and dance up like Balbo over long. Tell them can't curse who God bless. Me no know who somewhere try to